Hi, I'm Ryan West, and we're here at Dungeon Beach in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I've been mixing hip-hop and R&B for such a long time, this is kind of second nature to me, but anytime I'm in a group of people, especially engineers and audio nerds, everybody's asking questions about how to mix bass, how to deal with low frequencies. It's so difficult to get things to work well in a mix, and especially important is how do you make really deep bass sounds that are inherent in hip-hop and R&B music sound good in small earbuds and in laptops and smaller speakers, typically where people listen to music while sitting doing other things. It's not a big stereo system, it doesn't have a big woofer or a subwoofer. So how can you actually mix it into the track where it still works, it's still cohesive, and the song still holds together and the bass just doesn't disappear on you? I think the key to making bass work in a song like that is to make sure that the frequencies above the sub-frequencies are also well represented in the mix. Now, sometimes a way to do that is just with a simple EQ by sculpting the bass sounds so that the sub bass and the low mid bass and the mid sounds are somewhat even. And you can also use compression and EQ to make it sit right there in the mix. But another really cool way to make sure that those frequencies are well represented in the mix is to use things like a little bit of saturation, a little bit of distortion, so that you can add some presence in that low mid and the high mid frequencies. We're working with the bass line on the White Lines remix by Chansz Odero. And we've got sort of like this really cool bass sound that we got from the modular plugin. I'm going to play that back for you really quickly. Now, there's nothing on it right now. This is just straight from the plugin. Cool sound, really full, but I really want to get a little extra texture there on the mid-range and the high mid-range stuff so that it can really sort of peak out on smaller speakers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this saturation plugin. I'm pretty sure it's going to do what I want it to because I've used it a whole bunch before and I know exactly what it does. Now this thing can add a whole lot of saturation, but I really just want a little bit. I really just want to get some buzz to peak out over the top on this sound. First I'm going to listen to this in solo and just add a little bit to it, and then I'm going to take it out of solo, of course, so I can hear it in context with the mix and make sure it's doing what I want it to do. Let's check it out inside the mix. I had to bring the volume down just a little bit, but I'm going to play it back now. I'll put it in bypass so we can hear it without it, and then I'll put the saturation back in, and you'll see just how it starts to just peaks out over the top of the drums, keeps that bass present there in the mid-range. Yeah, I think it's doing its job, helping keep that bass present there in the mid-range. All right, so now we got a little bit of saturation cooking on that bass. I think we're in a good place. But there's a couple things I really want to do with this, and I really do want to smooth this sound out a bit. And there's a few things that I can do to smooth it out. One is compression, and the other is using an EQ to balance the sub-frequencies and the low-mid stuff so that this thing sits like right there in the track. I don't want it to move. I want it to just sort of like just be right where it is. Now, there are plenty of other types of songs where you want a lot of dynamics in the bass, jazz, whatever. This ain't that. This is straight up synth bass in a pop song. You kind of want that thing to sit right where it is. I'm going to go ahead and grab the Summit Audio Grand channel because it's got both of those things in there. It's got some filters, it's got an EQ, it also has a compressor built in. I think it has everything that we need to get this bass to sit right where we want it. Now in the default setting in this Grand channel, it has a saturation setting that's set to the middle position or normal, which means that there is some saturation already built into this. I don't think I want any more saturation, got plenty of that on the saturation knobs. I'm going to dial that back to clean. First thing I want to do is go ahead and engage this high pass filter. I just want to filter out the real sub frequencies, everything below 27 Hertz. I don't need anything down there. There's no speakers that are going to reproduce that anyway, so I'll just make that executive decision. Everything below 27, you out of here. The next thing I think I'm going to do, I'm going to use the lowest band in the EQ just to cut a little bit of, I don't know, this 56 Hertz setting seems to be a good place to start. I'm going to leave that on the shelf selection because I want everything below this certain frequency to drop just a little bit. And I'll just increase the bandwidth a little bit. I don't want it totally narrow, but I also don't want it to be really wide either. I'm gonna listen back to this bass in solo again and just see what happens when those lowest notes come in and drop those by just a bit so it balances the sound out. Just removed a little bit. I think it's a little bit of a better balance. Again, I'm making small moves here. And when I apply the compression, I'm going to go ahead and think about the EQ again at the same time I'm applying the compression, see how those two things respond together. I'm also going to go ahead and use this low cut detector option here. I'm going to sweep the low cut knob all the way up to 80 Hertz, and that's going to stop my compressor from reacting to anything below 80 Hertz. And now as I play this back, I'm going to start increasing the gain reduction on the TLA 100 compressor until I get, I don't know, probably 4, 5, 6, 7 dB worth of gain reduction. I'm going to use my ears. Not sure exactly what's going to sound best, but my guess is going to be somewhere in that range. I'll have a medium attack time and, I guess a medium release time as well. I think that's a good place to start. So let's take a listen and I'll start sweeping that gain reduction up and see what sounds best. I think that's a good place to start. Really quickly, I'm gonna go ahead and play it back again while it's in bypass, and then halfway through, I'll put it back in. And then guess what we're gonna do? You guessed it right. We're gonna put it in context, listen to it in the mix to make sure it works the way we want it to. Here we go. All right, let's hear it in context. I think we need a little bit more gain reduction. I really want to make sure that thing sits in the same place the whole time. So try it one more time, a little more gain reduction. I think that's working pretty well. I mean, it's doing what I wanted it to do. I wanted the bass to sit right there in the track at a constant volume. I wanted to balance the sub frequencies with the low mid frequencies and make sure that this thing, doesn't disappear when the kick drum hits. Give it a try. I think it'll work for you too. For those of you that are struggling to make a DI bass sound natural, I got a solution for you. I can use the bass amp plugin right on the DI bass track to make it sound a lot more natural. I got a choice between 3 different types of cabinets, the big 8x10 cabinet, and we all know who makes that one, a 4x10 cabinet, and then also a really small bass amp. And sometimes a small bass amp can really work. You're not looking for a big, huge, fat, round tone. You want something that's more mid-ranged. In this case, this is for a rock track. I want it to be big and rocking, and generally, big live shows, they're using these big 8x10 cabinets, so that's what I'm gonna start with. There's several parts of this plugin. One is the preamp, or the head, that you would normally use with a cabinet like this. Of course, the other one is the cabinet itself, the microphone, and then also the room that it's in. You can actually move this microphone back and forth, and it'll change the way the microphone is picking up the sound from the cabinet. This microphone looks really familiar. It's modeled on a Sennheiser 421 type microphone. Down on the bottom of this plugin, you also have a couple of other controls. You can balance between the direct injected, or the dry sound, and also the amplifier sound. You have a low cut, a high cut, a tone control, and a limiter. And these are all similar controls that you would have on almost any bass amp that you would ever encounter in any kind of recording situation. On the top, on the amp, you would have the same sort of normal controls you would have on a bass amp. You have a volume control, bass, mid, treble, and a master volume. Basically what this plugin allows me to do is to make it sound like that direct inject bass was recorded through an amp in a room with a microphone through a preamp. That's enough talking. I'm just gonna go ahead and show you how this thing works. I'm gonna go ahead and put the plugin in bypass, and I want you to listen to the way the bass sounds raw. Now this is just a DI, so it's a bass with a cable into a direct injection box, into a preamp, and straight into the DAW. No effects included. All right, that's pretty rock and roll, but that doesn't really sound like I think it belongs in this mix. I really want it to sound like it's coming through an amp. I'm gonna go ahead and unbypass this plugin, and I'm gonna move the mic around just a little bit until I find the sweet spot. Sometimes it's gonna sound great up close. You'll hear more of the rattle and the hum and buzz of the speaker. Sometimes it sounds better a little further away, where it's got some air. It's moving through some air before it gets to the microphone. Just take a listen to the difference as I move it from close to far. I'm gonna switch this DI amp balance all the way over to the amplifier solo. I think it's gonna probably be easier to hear the difference between the two. Did you hear how it became a little bit roomier, a little bit more ambient the further back I pulled the microphone? I think in this case, the sweet spot for me is a little bit closer to the amplifier. Maybe just about right here. Let's take a listen to that one more time. Again, here's the raw DI. Good place to start. Now I can adjust my bass, middle, and treble controls here so that I can sculpt the tone the way I want it. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add just a little bit of low end and play around with the mids and see what happens there. Cool, that's a good place to start. I think I'm gonna go down here and just use the low cut filter here and just pull out a little bit of the very sub bass, maybe down to about 40, because what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna add back in some of that DI or some of the direct inject. And that's where this filter works. It works on just the direct inject, not on the amp side. Cool, we're getting there, we're getting there, we're getting there. Next I'm gonna work with this tone knob. Now right now it's set in the center position, that's the default for this plugin. And then you'll notice you have thin and fat. I don't think I wanna get any thinner for this, but I think I do wanna get a little fatter. But I'm gonna sweep the control from thin to fat and you're gonna hear the difference between it. It's pretty drastic. Now, of course, that's just working on the DI, so you'll hear this a little bit more if I slide this more towards the DI. We'll sweep that one more time. I'm gonna go ahead and adjust the balance between my DI and amp one more time. I'm also going to cut off some of that top end there. There's a little bit of rattle up above, I don't know, 2K or so. So I'm going to start backing that down just a little bit. Did you hear how that picking noise and the string noise just got centered a little bit lower once we cut off some of that high frequency? I don't really think you need that kind of high frequency in a rock track. It's just going to sort of smear the top end of the bass a little bit too much and take away room for things like vocals and cymbals and all that kind of stuff. With bass, I don't think you need it, but again, you have to judge on a mix by mix basis. Another cool feature on this thing is that it incorporates a limiter. The more you turn up this limiter knob, the more limiting you're going to get. Let's turn this one up and see how it sounds. Maybe it's exactly the kind of limiter we want. I like that. It's keeping the bass like kind of steady. It's keeping it right there at a constant volume. And for a rock track like this, it needs to sit there. It needs to stay in the same place. Again, let's go ahead and put this in bypass, listen to our original, just DI signal, and then halfway through, I'm gonna pop this back in. I think it's gonna be a pretty big difference. That sounds a heck of a lot more like a bass and an amp to me. So like a lot of people, you might be stuck dealing with a bass that was recorded with only a DI. I mean, you know, a lot of bass tracks are recorded in project studios and small rooms where you could really never fit a big bass amp like this. And so what do? You choose a plugin like this where you can actually add the room simulation, the mic simulation, the amp head simulation, and the cabinet so that it sounds a little bit more realistic, sounds more believable. This works for me.